This is the In the Rabbit Hole episode archive project. What you're about to watch and listen to is a past episode from In the Rabbit Hole Urban Survival Podcast. You can learn more by visiting intherabbithole.com. Be sure to like this video and subscribe to our YouTube channel now.
And now, two guys who are still kosher after the swine flu, Aaron and Jonathan.
Howdy, and welcome to episode 78 of In the Rabbit Hole's Urban Survival Podcast. In this episode, it's time to reload our survival chi. We're your hosts, Aaron
and Jonathan,
and you are in the rabbit hole, safe and sound. I just came off an emergency project that required me to work 38 hours straight without sleep, and because of that, I'm obviously pretty loopy right now. Rather than leave you with nothing for the week or give you a babbling, incoherent crap show, let's go over survival chi. It's been a while. If you've heard this episode before, now is a great time to listen with wiser ears. If you're new to the show, this is a perfect one to bring you up to speed on the core of In the Rabbit Hole. As a teaser, part 2 of homeschooling is being recorded this week, along with a show on archery and a really unique show on human hacking for survival. What is human hacking? You'll just have to wait and find out. But it is just as exciting and interesting as the title suggests. So enough of that. I'm going to go take a nap, and here's Survival Chi Reloaded for your listening pleasure. We realized we hadn't done a proper Survival Chi show since episode 12, and we're now on episode 43. And we've had a lot of new listeners come on in that time period, and so we thought today we would go over survival chi again, but not just do a recap of what survival chi is. We'd really kind of like to introduce you to the process of how we actually came up with survival chi, and that we didn't just pull it out of the air. And we kind of started by first identifying problems. I mean, this kind of came up when we're going to do a show. What's it really going to be about? What is the format? How are we going to have a productive message that is not the same as everyone else that has a survival blog or survival podcast? And it's not just different to be different. There's no point in doing the show if we can't produce quality content that isn't better than somebody else is doing or different than somebody else is doing. And then it was also, do we believe in that difference? Is it really something that speaks to our core and that we hope speaks to our listeners' core? So that's kind of where we're going to go today. And we'll start off with kind of the problems that we identified. And I think by and large, the one that kind of bugged both of us the most was that the survival community is all about disaster and societal collapse, whether it's economic or whether it's a pandemic or something like that. And while there's a place for that, it's probably not necessarily the most productive use of time. If you go back and you listen to the shows that we've done where we've touched on Jack Spirko's disaster matrix, which we use a lot for our planning, and the way we talk about how to prepare for disasters, starting with the most likely to happen in your life and working your way up to the least likely to happen in your life. And so we go along through the process, and we spent, John, I think we spent a couple of weeks going back and forth and discussing different topics and discussing other
It might
things.
have been more than weeks. I mean, yeah. I would say, we do it on a regular basis, but even for this particular thing, we spent, maybe a month and a half, 2 months.
Yeah. really, I mean, discussing it, sometimes arguing about it, and really
regularly arguing about it.
Yes. There may have been water guns involved or Nerf blasters or something.
Yeah.
But that was kind of the first part, was that we didn't want to be another show where we're screaming into the microphone at people, although we do every once in a while, but trying to stay away from that. And, a good example of why it would be unnecessary to produce just yet another show of that, or why in general in life, focusing solely on major doom and gloom would be, and I hate to pick on the guy. Actually, no, I take that back. I don't. The whole thing is ridiculous. The guy, what's his name? Harold Camping. And he came out with the theory, and this was not his first rodeo for doing this, that he had decoded the Bible and that doomsday was upon us. And I think he's even released a new statement of, well, I got my calculations off. It's going to be this. And he keeps doing it. And I look at it and I'm like, that's, to me at least, I look at it and I think, that's fine if you and your followers believe that. That's totally cool. I have no issue with that. But these people completely changed their lives based on the assumption that life as we know it was going to end.
Yeah, the end of the world as we know it was coming.
Exactly.
Actually, the end of the world. It was just, was it. It wasn't as we know it.
It was proper Armageddon in a Christian theological way. And again, no problem with the concept, but I kind of look at it and go, why did you need to change your life about it? Why did you need to completely uproot who you were and what you were doing just for this event, when if you followed your own basic theology, all you really need to worry about is being a good person and being the best human being you can possibly be, and whatever other measures are required of your religion to make sure that you get to go to heaven, then whether or not Armageddon comes is of no consequence.
Right. It's kind of like, if you're prepared for it and you've been living life that you wanted to live, then why would you be worried about it ending? I mean, it's not nice for it to end, but why would you need to change everything so dramatically just because?
The next problem that we identified was, from our standpoint, people get really nervous about calling themselves survivalists, and other people get nervous when somebody tells you they're a survivalist. So, but for us, we really felt like it shouldn't be. This survival, even though the term has was kind of given a negative connotation back in, I think it was the 1960s. It might have been the 1950s when that first happened. But it doesn't need to be. It actually, when we look at survival, we think of it as this really empowering topic, reclaiming who we are and reclaiming what we do and being responsible for ourselves. That there's that individual responsibility that we've talked so much about in the past. Things that can happen in your life, even up to the medium-sized things that can happen in your life. So many that is so common. If you look back to, for those listening old enough, to 2000, when we were going from 99 to 2000, and everybody was terrified that the entire computer grid was going to crash, nothing was going to work anymore, we weren't going to have stoplights, dogs and cats living in sin.
And I mean, look at what happened after Katrina, right? It's the same idea. It's every disaster that happens or we think might happen creates a huge rush for everybody to be prepared for every disaster. And then you go 6 months to a year without one happening, and all of a sudden everybody forgets that disasters happen. It's a standard cycle.
It is. And I think to fall asleep is terrible. You put the time and the energy into doing something that really could be extremely productive in your life. To then go, well, maybe that really isn't ever going to happen. And we're not saying that we didn't, by we, I mean, Jonathan and I didn't have the same thought. And I do from time to time still have the thought, man, maybe I'm putting through a lot of effort for nothing. But then I think back to what the core concept of survival chi is and think, it doesn't matter. I can keep doing these things, and these things do have, whether things go wrong or whether things go right, all of these things that I'm doing in my life to be prepared that fall under the survivalist umbrella do actually benefit my life. And one of them, actually, I just had something that really was a major impact on my life that we'll maybe throw in a little bit later. But it was a huge benefit that all came from doing all of this stuff and really working every day. And so that was kind of where we started to identify, okay, this really needs to be about doing good in your life.
Right. Just to put a slightly different spin on it, it can never be a negative thing to do good things. And if those good things are, even if that good thing is the idea of storing food, it can't hurt you to store food. All it can do is mean you have a food store. The worst case scenario is you can buy less food for a while and use up some of your store, that's your worst case scenario. Your best case scenario is that you never need to use it and you just use it. The worst case scenario, actually, to go back a little bit, the worst case scenario is that you actually do have to use it. And it's a critical thing because you can't get food anywhere else but from your food store. But the best case scenario really just says, hey, I go through my food store, it hedges my bets on cost, I save a little bit of money. There's no downside to that. Same thing with any of the other things we talk about when it comes to survival chi. Maintaining a network, that's what Aaron was just talking about with good things happening in his life recently, or part of it, not the whole thing, but that's a piece of it. Maintaining a network can never be a bad thing. It's all about maintaining friendships, relationships, human interaction, being a good person. Helping others. We talked about it in the last episode a little bit, but it's that idea of that social banking system of, putting a little bit in, taking a little bit out. When we all do that and help each other, that's a positive. You can't get a negative out of doing these things.
Exactly. The next and probably most obvious difference was when we read about survival or when we listened to other people speak about survival, it was almost always from the standpoint of running off to the woods or just in general moving to a much more rural environment. And for those people that do it, I think we kind of go back to the problem of falling asleep, or changing your life to unnecessarily. And if it's your thing and you do want to live in a rural or live in the sticks, that's fine, more power to you. But for those of us that kind of really enjoy the city and even enjoy really dense urban environments and the benefits of that, well, how do we be survivalists? How do we prepare and stay in the city? And there are some people that talk about it, but I think none of them do it either in a rational way or in a way that's easy to relate to. There is a really great author, and that I think a lot of people know by the name of Fairfall. He's fantastic. Problem is, when he talks about survival, he's coming at it from a standpoint of somebody who's been through an economic collapse. If you are brand new to survival, that's a huge, jagged pill to swallow, and to try to conceptualize and visualize and identify with in any way what that would be like, at least for American survivalists, that we've had some rough economic times, but our dollar hasn't collapsed yet, and nothing really major has gone wrong here from that standpoint, where we really are having to survive and where carrying a gun every day or carrying a knife every day really is a necessity. So, and I think most of the small handful of urban survivalists that are out there come at it from that way. And even when we go through the small selection of urban survival books, they come at it from a very similar standpoint. There was a book that I reviewed a while back, and it was Ragnar Benson's Urban Survival. And that book started off flat out, couldn't figure out where the book was coming from. Why was the author talking about it? because it was talking about urban survival from a standpoint of your city being a war zone, a literal war zone. It was almost as if he was writing about it from being, what was it, Sarajevo, or where was... There was an urban war 10 years. It doesn't matter, but anyway, it was.
There have been a bunch recently.
Yeah,
actually,
exactly.
So yeah.
This was about 10 years ago, I think, but it was so far outside the context of people's lives. And while the information was good, if we're ever in that situation, and there was other information that was really good about preparing, it was so hard to identify with. And I got done with the book. It's like, it was interesting, but it's just hard to even connect with the author or the material. So that was kind of the real problem that we saw, that really said, okay, we have something within that urban context. We really have our second piece now that really does make it worthwhile for us to do the show, the blog, and for y'all to conversely read and listen. The final thing that we really kind of came across was, this is more of a nitpicky thing, in my opinion, which is poor quality. Some of the blogs out there are just decent information, but written badly. And podcasts, similarly, bad audio. Now, not that we always have the best audio, or not that we are audiophile quality of audio, but to me, it's really about craftsmanship. Your message can be fantastic, and your message can be totally worth listening to. But if you don't put as much energy into the craftsmanship.
Yeah, if you go to a restaurant and order the best meal they've got, and it comes out to you looking like a pile of poo, you're less likely to want to eat it. And that's why chefs spend so much time doing things like plating. Looking at something is just as important as how it tastes. How does it look? And it's the same thing we felt with all these blogs we were reading and all the forums we were looking at, and even the books that were out there and the podcasts. It was kind of like, yeah, there was some good information we could glean from them. Most often it wasn't directly related to our lives because of the urban aspect that Aaron alluded to. But even more than that, it was sometimes they were just painful to read or listen to or whatever, because it was just so poorly done. It was like, this is an afterthought, and I'm going to throw it together because people might be interested, which I appreciate them doing that. And I do. And I don't, if people have ideas they can share, go ahead, do it, and then polish it up later. But please, at some point, try to polish it a little.
Yeah, and especially if you turn it into a business and you're making money off it.
Exactly.
There is something to be said for pride in craftsmanship. And I think I was watching the documentary recently on Steve Jobs' life. And one of the real defining driving forces in his life was something his father taught him. And his father was a cabinet maker, if I'm not mistaken. And there was a very impactful moment when he's talking about how his father showed him or taught him that the way to tell truly quality cabinetry was to pull it out and look at the back of it. And if the back was as finished and they did as nice of a job on the back of the cabinetry that no one would ever see as they did on the front, that tells you it was a craftsman that truly, passionately loved and cared about what he was doing. And I think in a lot of ways, that's kind of the same concept that we've taken from it. And I know, coming from a heavy arts background, I always felt the same way. It doesn't matter. It doesn't matter if no one ever sees it. You know it's there. And it doesn't matter if anyone ever notices. You know it's there. And that's been part of the show for us for a behind-the-scenes standpoint, is we're always looking for ways to improve the quality and improve the editing of the show, improve the equipment we use within reason. Audio equipment can get incredibly expensive very quick. Improving what we put out. An example would be videos. And videos is something we've really wanted to do, but part of it is everything that we've done, we've kind of looked at it and go, no, it's just, the information's good. But when I watch it, I'm a little distracted or sometimes a lot distracted by bad audio, or just the video quality itself isn't that great. And maybe the timing of things isn't that great. And we really need to work on it. And so it's kind of, to us, we don't want to turn out, what is it? There's the expression, a polished turd.
Yeah, and just so everybody knows, we're saying all this, and if you happen to hear a dog barking in the background or a fan or the remnants of a TV, I'm going to apologize now. I'm not recording in the normal studio. I'm not even recording in my normal setup of office because of the way we've got the move, all of our moved stuff, and we're trying to get things a little consolidated over the course of this weekend. So I'm just going to apologize for our slightly lower quality today.
So then we took all of that. And we kind of, like any business, one of the best things you can do is come up with a mission statement, that defining sentence or even paragraph that really simply lays out who you are. And we'll actually share that with you today. And usually this is something that just stays within your notes. And it's not usually something, but, you're our friends. We like you. And we want you to know what the show's about, and if you're brand new, you're still friends, and we want you to know what you're getting yourself into. So the mission statement is pretty simple. Our mission for the show is to deliver useful, level-headed information on survival in a way that also improves your life today and prepares you for tough times and extreme circumstances as well. And we wanted to really reach out to people interested in survival, living in an urban area that didn't want to move off to the woods.
Yeah, we were just trying to, point out it's going to sound obvious sometimes because we go through it in a way where we point out problems and we give you solutions. We don't want to tell you what to believe and what to do. That's not the intention here. We want to treat this like it's a discussion with you. We want you to give your input too. That's why we've opened up the forums. That's why we take listener questions. We take all the feedback we get actually very seriously. We both review it. It's not like you send the email and it goes into this big bucket of junk or something like that. No, it actually gets sent to each one of our personal email accounts. So it doesn't even just go to our In the Rabbit Hole account. It actually gets copied out to our personal accounts. So, it comes right to our iPhones and we read them immediately. And we actually give the responses a lot of thought. And sometimes you won't hear a direct response from us. It's not like we come out and say, hey, Joe, whoever from Oklahoma wrote us an email and now we're responding to it. Instead, what we do is we make actual changes to the format. We'll go in and update something or we'll answer it with a whole show. So that's a real... For us, that was important because we didn't necessarily want to make it a call-in show because that's tough over a podcast that isn't live. But at the same time, we wanted to really have an interaction with you, and we did want to point out the problems that are out there. We did want to give you solutions to those problems, but we don't want to just say, hey, this is the only answer to that.
Yeah, and I think an example of that, a big example of that, is we're both pretty hardcore libertarians. And while that slant is always going to be there, I think it's impossible for human beings to talk about topics without the tents that their filters that they see the world through, without that bleeding in some way, shape, or form. Largely, we try to keep it out of the show because we don't feel, and unless we genuinely feel that there really is a topic, and then in some way that political aspect.
And we will always warn you at the beginning of the show. We'll never try to sneak it in on you. It's pretty obvious, and you've heard it in the shows in the past. We always started off with, "Hey, this one's going to be a little different."
Exactly. And the other aspect of it is we really wanted to produce, and we try to produce shows, with the exception of maybe one, where we motivate you to prepare without scaring the crap out of you, and I'll give you an example. And I've talked about it before, but I like to watch Glenn Beck. I don't agree with everything he says. If you hate Glenn Beck, please don't email me about it. I know there's plenty of people that don't like him. There are aspects of his show I hate and aspects of his show I really enjoy.
And for those of you out there, Aaron listens to him all the time. I don't listen to him. I appreciate Glenn Beck as a entertainer and a performer, and I think he has an interesting way of delivering information. But we very often have two sides of the coin when you listen to the show. We're both libertarians, but we're coming at it from different directions.
Totally. But that was kind of one of the things as we watch, or when we read, like the book I talked about, Ragnar, or for those of you familiar with Glenn Beck and have actually watched his show, I was joking with somebody the other night that it's almost impossible to watch his show and not want to immediately pull up a web page and start surfing for ammo and for long-term food storage products and stuff like that.
I do that without watching his show.
That is true.
As I'm sure many of you listening do, too. I do that reading the New York Times.
Yeah. Yeah. The next part of the formation process of survival chi, and if you're listening, don't worry, we will actually, if you've never heard it before, we are going to spend the second half of the show actually getting into what is survival chi. But the formation process, as we talked about, that we went back and forth for maybe a month, maybe even longer, and talked it out. And there were questions that we asked each other and asked ourselves, and it started with some very simple things, which is, well, what is survival? What does survival mean? Is survival just about getting through a disaster? Or is survival really about a quality of life, regardless of what's going on?
Well, and what's interesting also is, in these conversations, we've had some of you ask us, too, how do you guys get into these interesting conversations? And I'm going to give you a little bit of insight, because since the show is about how we came up with the show and a little bit about the philosophy behind it, I'll give you some of the behind the scenes. A lot of our thought process actually happens on the way to and from the gun range. We've mentioned this before, but Aaron has this Tahoe, and it's a Chevy Tahoe. You'd think like any other, but it's actually the second Chevy Tahoe in my knowing Aaron, and the first one lasted a very long time. The second one's been around for a while now, too, because we've known each other for quite a while.
I've actually had three.
In the time I've known you?
Yeah. Not in the time you've known me, but I've had three in my lifetime.
See, there you go. So this is number 3, but the second one I've known. And what we find is that when we sit in the Tahoe, it takes about 2 minutes. And it's normally any shorter than 2 minutes, and it's just not worth having this type of conversation. It takes about 2 minutes. The gun range happens to be about, 45 minutes away, Aaron? You think?
It's about 45 minutes.
So 2 minutes in, we will start the conversation. And it doesn't matter how we start it. We always end up talking about all the things in the world that are concerning us, how we plan to solve those problems, and then we generally talk each other down from whatever rant we're on at the time. So that's the behind the scenes. And it's funny because we've had the comment that people like the fact that the show turns into a bit of a conversation. Well, that's actually how the formation of the show happened. That's how the discussion of each one of these topics happens. I mean, Aaron and I really are friends. We didn't just get together to do this show. And it's been an interesting process for us, because at times we always wonder, is this really the way to do a show? But it seems to be working. We enjoy it, and it allows us to talk to you about the things that are concerning us.
And going back to the Tahoe and the way each episode gets formed, it is an important aspect of the show for us that the show gets formed that way, because it's a very natural conversation that happens for us, whether we're what we often jokingly call the Tahoe of silence, because sometimes things said in the Tahoe don't leave the Tahoe, but also sometimes it's sitting around the studio and just chatting, sometimes for hours, trying to really refine an idea, because we'll get ideas and we'll have concepts, but then we have to boil them down into a way that we can talk about in under an hour, or even further.
Yeah, we always try to keep the show to under an hour. I know there might have been one or two that have crept over, but overall we try to keep the show to under an hour. And that's not just for us. I mean, because in all honesty, we spend hours, if not days worth of time on each one of these. And that's not telling you to feel guilty that we're spending so much time on it or anything. It's more along the lines of, we've got a lot to talk about, and we enjoy doing this, which is why we're doing it. And we actually love it when we get feedback, because it's bringing another person into that dialogue. So now that we've got a lot of you out there, and there are a whole lot of you out there listening, which is fantastic, makes us feel great, because that's that many more people that we have as part of this almost, it's now a semi-private dialogue. It's a dialogue with, about 2,000 of our best friends. Mm-hmm. And we're loving it. So it's a good time, and we're still growing. So tell more people, bring them into the dialogue.
Exactly. One of the other questions we asked ourselves was, what are the most important aspects of survival? what is the singular thing that makes those fundamentals function? And this is where we really got into spending a lot of time, and this is really where the real key parts of where survival chi came from.
And by the way, survival chi really it was funny because we didn't realize we'd come out with something kitschy like survival chi until after we actually wrote it on a whiteboard. We'd been talking about it for days, and then finally we were kind of just sitting there going, all right, we need to write some of this down. So we started writing it, and all of a sudden it's like, wait a minute, did we just write out chi?
And that really is exactly how it happened. It was really funny, and I don't think much vodka was involved in that time.
No, oddly enough, although we might have inhaled a lot of primer.
Well, that's always true. I'm a primer addict.
There was and when I say primer, I mean the stuff that sets off gunpowder and bullets. For those of you out there listening, not paint primer. We don't huff paint, at least not regularly.
Sometimes.
And after, I think that day must have been a 500 round a person day, maybe even more. So after inhaling a lot of gunpowder and primer, this is what we came up with.
Yes. The next question we asked ourselves is, can expending energy on these fundamentals benefit your life today, tomorrow, and in survival situations? And the reason for that is that question allowed us to whittle out a lot of the crap.
Yeah.
And really whittle it, because we were really trying to get it down to this very concise, singular thing, a concise, singular concept.
Well, and for me, that today, tomorrow aspect, and sorry to step on your words there, Aaron, but for me, that today, tomorrow piece of it was so important, because if I'm this goes back to what we said earlier, which is the not falling asleep. If what I'm giving you is just going to impact you during the next Hurricane Ike or Hurricane Katrina or giant earthquake or mudslide or huge fire or whatever it might be, then you're going to forget. And it's not because you want to forget. It's just that you've got a lot of things going on in your life, and it happens that way. So what we wanted to do is make sure that everything we gave you that would help you in a survival situation was applicable today, tomorrow, in your career, in your private life, when it comes to dealing with going grocery shopping, when it comes to dealing with how to get your next job, or if you're unemployed, how to start looking for a job, or if, whatever it might be. Even in the last show, the last show dealt with networking. It also dealt with relationships in general, because they're really the same thing. And we wanted to make sure that everything we gave you as part of this survival chi concept was just as applicable today in good times as it would be potentially down the road in a disaster.
Then we sat down and we talked about, and I guess this is the question that kind of defines why it was so important. Why do we need to make it so concise? And why does the kitschy was just an extra benefit, but why does it need to be so tight? And that is, how do we simplify it so that it's easy to digest, easy to understand, and make it something that we could tell somebody, and conversely, that you can turn around and repeat in roughly 30 seconds or less?
Yeah, for those of you who have marketing jobs out there, you've heard of the elevator pitch. And we wanted this to be the preparedness elevator pitch. The whole idea of, you think it's silly, when people look at you and say, wow, it's kind of nuts to be a survivalist or to be a prepper. Well, is it really? Let me just tell you about survival chi. And, you go through this whole idea very quickly, takes you 30 seconds, and people look at you and go, all right, that makes sense. That was the goal.
And that really was. And that's because that's kind of one of the problems we all have. And we talked about in social networks, and we also talked about in the episode of convincing others to prepare, that people have that, and we even talked at the beginning of the show, that people have that initial reaction that maybe aren't already interested in survival, or are interested in survival, but haven't really kind of made action towards getting there in any way. And so you want to make that pitch as quickly as possible in as rational and as productive and this will benefit you in the here and now way before you lose their attention, or before they get a chance to really put walls up. And that's how we ended up boiling it down into such a simple thing.
So by now you've got to be asking, for those of you who are new and for those of you who are older, going, all right, get into it already. What is survival chi?
Survival chi stands for community, health, and intelligence. And then from there, those three individual aspects break down a little bit further. Under community, we have family, we have friends, and we have neighbors. And when I say neighbors, I don't just mean the people living immediately next door to you, or if you're in an apartment above and below you. It's really kind of the world outside the circles of your family and friends.
It's your network.
Exactly. And then health isn't just, when we think of health, we often think of just our bodies, but it's not. From a survival standpoint, health isn't just about that. Health is also about your mental health, your financial health, and your physical health. And there's the final one is your intelligence. And intelligence isn't about IQ scores. It isn't about your ability to pass the SATs or to blow the SATs away or something along those lines. It's really about acquiring skills, and not just skills for survival, but any skills and things that you enjoy and things that enhance your life that will also in some way end up relating to something else in your life and become in many ways problem solvers for you through experience. And knowledge is knowledge of yourself, knowledge of your loved ones, knowledge of your history, knowledge of the world around you, current events, things like that.
And it can be the books you read, the things you take in through those, the things you learn outside of the skill itself by learning a skill. So, for instance, when you go and learn a specific skill, there's a lot of things around that skill that you tend to learn about yourself. That all falls under this knowledge category too.
Absolutely. And one of the things that you'll notice that I don't even think we fully realized when we first came up with the concept, it was something as we kind of dug into it and really like, okay, yeah, all right, we've got this tidy little concept that we can put out quickly, that other people can put out quickly, but it's also something that can be very complicated and that you can go into very deep discussions about. What we realized is all of these things are 100% intertwined. Your community is intertwined with your health, is intertwined with your intelligence, and the subparts are all intertwined with one another and intertwined with parts, for example, like your family. Well, that can have an impact on your mental and also
sometimes positive, financial. Often not. Mental health. That was about the mental health.
Right. Well, sometimes financial too. Maybe you've got an uncle or something that's always borrowing money and never giving it back.
That's a bad thing.
Yeah, or exactly. It's something in anything. So why is community, we'll go kind of through them one by one here. Why is community so important? Well, we've talked in several episodes about, in many ways, community is and can be your single greatest tool and asset for survival.
Mm-hmm.
And that has to do with the here and now. And we did the jobs episode where we talked about your network and how incredibly important networks have become in today's society for actually finding a job. And actually, there's talk these days about how the resume is dead and this or that. And honestly, you can kind of go back to the very old expression of it's not what you know, it's who you know. That's been around for a very long time. So really, that's that underpinning theme that your network is really what gets you through. And it's also that network that will be the many hands to make light work when disasters do come.
Right. We've talked about it a few times, but they're really in nature. Maybe there are a couple lone wolves out there. I got an email about that one that, yeah, there are. Well, okay. The reality of it, though, is that wolves are pack animals. So the idea of the wolf doesn't want to be a lone wolf either. And just like the wolf, you want to be in your community. You want to be part of a tribe or a community or a group. And that is so important to your survival. And it impacts that like Aaron said, these things are also entwined. Having that community to be there around you to support you and for you to help support them is important to not just the community itself, but to your health. And as from that health impact, there's an intelligence impact too, because your community can help teach you. You can learn from your community. You can grow within your community. So there's so much of that community that's actually directly in relation to the other two pieces that's why it actually comes first. I mean, it wasn't a mistake, and it wasn't so that we could spell out chi. It was really that it really was that community is just so critical to being a healthy person. And when I say healthy, again, it goes across health, intelligence, growing, networking, expanding yourself.
That is so true. And going outside of it, and to tie in for just a second, I can't go into a lot of details about it, but in this past week, I wasn't looking for a new job, but I was actually offered a really amazing job working for what I can say is doing the marketing for a celebrity. And a whole new role and a whole new thing opened up. And that's how networks can benefit you in the here and now.
I know a lot about this particular opportunity for you. And one of the things I think really pushed you, not just the community, the networking aspect, but your desire to gain knowledge and skills. I mean, that was such a big part of it in the decision of that celebrity to pick you for this and to come to you and say, hey, would you like to be part of this thing I'm building? It was just, it's amazing how all these things that we've been talking about for such a long time now really do impact. It's when we first did it, we were like, we think these things are true. And from our own lives, we believe them to be true. But how do they really work in practice? And we've been trying to do that, put all the three pieces of chi into practice in our daily lives. And it really does help. I mean, it's the same way I got the job that I'm in right now, which to me is a dream job. I think Aaron could say the same thing. It's impacted us on a daily basis. I mean, in every aspect of what we do, these three pieces just come in. I mean, even the health aspect of, I watch my health in a completely different way now than I did before.
Oh, absolutely.
So, I only eat 1 or 2 cheeseburgers a day instead of 4.
You lie. I saw you had 3 the other day.
Hey, that was a special day. I was celebrating.
There was bacon on it.
Exactly. Made it healthy.
Well, yeah, because it comes from the bacon tree.
Mm-hmm.
So health, how does health play into it? Well, with your mental health, few things can have as large an impact on your life as your mental health. If you feel like crap, or, we can go back to community for a second and show how they're intertwined. If your family feels like crap, or if there's something like that, these things really do impact your mental state. And your mental state then turns around and influences your physical state.
Even something you perceive as a distraction is really a flux, if you will, in your mental health. I mean, it's something that's impacting you that you're thinking about that is taking you away from the more important things in your life. And like Aaron said, it could be something going on in your community, within your network, within your friends, within your family. It could be something along the lines of something you don't know how to do. So it could be from your intelligence, that area around skills and knowledge. But it's a huge impact. I mean, any kind of distraction or change in your mental health will impact all the other parts of your life. And, many of you know that, and some of you ignore it, some of you don't. But that's okay. I mean, it's something it's things you learn about yourself as you grow within this overall chi movement.
Oh, we're a movement now. That's awesome.
Hey, I'm growing us.
We started a movement. So, and your physical health is, I think a lot of people don't really realize just how influential your physical health can be on your mental health. If you're getting exercise on a regular basis, being 4 days a week, you really do start to feel good for a number of reasons. One, your body starts to release endorphins. 2, you get into better physical shape and your immune system improves. And you also have the added benefit of looking better. And looking better always makes everybody feel better. So
it's huge. People feel better when they look. Oh, and you know what? I'm going to endorse something right now. I'm getting nothing from these people, or it's not particular people, but my wife and I, Karen and I, just started a program called C25K. And what it stands for is Couch to 5K. Now, neither one of us was a couch potato before, but we also hated running. I mean, I and Aaron can attest, I have all kinds of bad things I would say about running as a way of exercise. I mean, to me, running was something you do to get away from something or to something. You don't just do it. But I started this program called C to 5K, and the whole idea is you get up to 5K, which, by the way, is 3.1 miles. for those of you doing the math. And you go from 0 to that 3.1 miles. And by the time you finish this 9-week program, the idea is that you can run that 3.1 miles without stopping or slowing down. You know your pace, you can set it, and you can just go. And that's a big deal. Well, I will tell you, I've now been doing it for just 2 weeks, and it has made huge improvements. So for those of you looking to just get started into exercise, and I know for many of you out there, it's way too cold to start an outdoor sport, or it's getting to that point of winter. So maybe you can do it on a treadmill or something else. But here in Texas or in Austin, cold is now 70 degrees, so that's perfect running weather. But I will tell you, I fully endorse the concept of the C to 5K. You can find out all about it on the internet. There's all kinds of apps you can download for the BlackBerry, for the iPhone, and for Android. You don't need those apps. It's a pretty simple program, and it's all written out in many websites online. But it's a great way to start the process towards better physical health. Even just starting an activity is a good way to get going. And that's really the point of all that. It could be anything. It could be a daily walk to get started. It could be getting into running. It could be going to the gym, like Aaron said, 3-4 times a week. In addition to that, it's about eating healthier. Take a look at what you're eating and really think about it. Do you need that extra cheeseburger? That's, and I have to ask myself all the time. That question wasn't directed to all of you out there. It's really something I ask myself, which is, Jonathan, do you really need that cheeseburger? Now, sometimes I answer yes, I really do. and other times I think to myself, no, maybe I should order the, Asian chicken salad or something like that, just to get a little bit more greens in. But it's something we all have to do to get just better, and it'll help you in all the situations that are possibly out there. In a disaster, you don't want to be that guy who can't get out of something because you're too big.
Yeah, and that's kind of one of the things that if you really look through at how people die in disasters, a lot of it has to do with the physical shape that the people that became casualties were in.
Right.
They couldn't fit through space. They didn't have the agility to get out of the way or to fit through something or kind of. So that really is where the physical part benefits you in the here and now. And in a survival situation, if you really do have to resort to the point of putting your bug out bag on your back and walking out of a bad situation, you're not going to be able to do that in poor health, in poor physical condition.
Right. And for those of you out there right now, and I know I've done it in the past, joked around, and I know Aaron and I both did it when we were, not in our healthiest state. We joked around, this is my food reserve, well, good luck with that. Doesn't really work that way. And if you are carrying around that spare tire, I lost mine. I know Aaron lost his. Put the spare tire away and keep it hung up somewhere.
Yeah. So moving on to financial, again, these things are also intertwined. Your financial health. What is it? What are the top 2 things that cause divorce in this country? And it's, you look it up and it's disagreements over sex and money. And while we're not really going to get into the sex part,
that's a different show.
That's a totally different show. The financial aspect of it, that really has a tremendous impact on your mental health, which turns around and has an impact on your physical health. That has a direct impact on your community and the people around you, either because they're causing it or because they're also stressed out about it, which then turns around and puts added pressure on your mental. So it's a vicious, nasty cycle.
Oh, think about how many times you hear people talking about their bills and how it's given them an ulcer and this and that and the other thing. Those are, we talk about it, we joke as a society, but that's all real. I mean, if you are worried about your financial situation, you are making yourself unhealthy as a whole. And it will impact your ability to go learn new skills. It will impact your ability to maintain a healthy network, whether that be with your friends, family, or your neighbors. So it's critical that you look after yourself, whether it's mentally, physically, or financially. You really have to spend the time to keep yourself healthy in those areas.
Absolutely. And intelligence is a very interesting one because it really does impact everything else. Just like all of these things all impact one another. gaining new skills, it does a lot for you. We briefly touched on it a little while ago that when you learn new skills, it's not just about the skill you're learning that can solve a problem or allow you to do something. It gives you a new perspective. Every new skill and every new depth you reach with a skill gives you a new perspective that allows you to have that much more experience in the world to solve other problems. And that's, you know what, that's a lot. That's a big part of life, is problem solving. And knowledge is much in the same way, in that you're gaining experience and you're gaining new information that can help you solve problems, help you see opportunities, help you see bad opportunities, and make better decisions.
Believe it or not, reading a book about something isn't just reading a book about that thing. What you're doing is you're taking in a whole new perspective on that item, right? So, and again, we're not talking about IQ here as being some genius intellect somewhere, you know, the big brain concept. But if you've read a book, even if the book takes you a month to read, 2 months to read, whatever, you skim through it slowly, when you get through with that, it gives you a new way of looking at a topic. So when you look at it, you're not just looking at it from your perspective. Now you have someone else's also to bring into it. It allows you to better problem solve. It allows you to take a look at how to learn that skill in a slightly different way.
To kind of go into, all right, these concepts that we've laid out and everything, we're all well and good, but these are big concepts that we're talking about. And how do you make these things, where do you even begin to implement them in your life? Well, before doing anything, ask yourself if it either harms or benefits any one of the 3 primary survival chi areas, whether we're talking about doing something for survival or doing something in our daily lives. And the next very simple thing to do is create simple goals. And we did 2 different shows. One was on the 7 Habits, which was kind of a spoof on Stephen Covey's book, and the other one was on, we did a thing on the survival template, and we're going to put links to both of those in the show notes. Kind of go back over those and really look at them, because we have a homework assignment for you this week.
Well, and actually, really quickly, before we jump into that, on this simple goals idea, and Aaron, you wrote that line, and I'm glad you did. I was just reading a great study done by Harvard Business Review. And they actually wrote a paper on what makes successful people successful. And they actually said that it wasn't intelligence, it's not luck, it's not all these other pieces we think it is. It actually comes down to creating simple goals that are easily understood by the person who wrote it. So you write your own goals, right? But a lot of times we'll write these very lofty, you know, I don't know, lofty is probably the best word, lofty goals. And if you can actually take that and turn it into a bunch of simple goals and steps, you're much more likely to achieve what you want to than if you were to write some lofty thing like be the best survivalist. Well, being the best survivalist, well, that doesn't mean very much. It's an interesting idea, but it doesn't really mean anything. But if you can create a simple goal, a simple concept of I want to do X, and X is something like I am going to learn how to sharpen a knife better. Well, you'll probably actually be able to achieve that. And then if you go to the next step of not only am I going to be able to sharpen a knife, but I now want to take one and learn how to put an edge on a knife, then you're actually going to learn to achieve that. And you can go one step at a time until one day you go, you know what? I know how to make a knife. So it's just that type of goal setting. And that, here we go. Now let's get on to the homework assignment, which Aaron spent some time coming up with here.
All right, here we go. And before we get into this, I do want to thank BM Jeep from the forum. And today and next week's shows were actually his ideas. So thank you, Mike. This was stellar stuff. And I think we would have gone probably another year before we thought to go back to Survival Chi again. So, and to do a homework assignment. So the first thing you need to do this week is review what activities you have been doing and ask yourself if they enhance your community, your health, and intelligence. And if they do not enhance, if they in fact harm, or if they do nothing for those things, then consider cutting them out. Maybe even do a little more than just consider cutting them out. Maybe actually cut them out. The next thing you need to do is develop and write out your goals, for furthering your survival chi in ways that prepare you for tough times, but also benefit you today. And really sit and think about it. First, scribble them all out. Stream of consciousness, throw them out on the paper, but then go through and kind of weed through them.
And you know what? That's a tough one for some people to think about. And I'm actually going to use the knife example again. And the reason I am is it actually comes from something I'm doing, and I think Aaron is actually going to participate in also. But it's this whole idea of something that benefits skills. So I picked skills. And I found a class with a master knife maker on how to sharpen knives. I thought to myself, all right, that's pretty good. That's pretty good. It benefits me today because I do have kitchen knives I'd like to sharpen, and I hate the idea of having to take them someplace and pay to get them sharpened by somebody who may or may not ruin a really nice chef's knife. So that benefits me right now. As soon as I take that class, I have immediate benefit to myself, my wife. You know, we've got nice kitchen knives. We'd like to keep them sharp. But down the road, let's say there were a disaster. The idea of knowing how to properly sharpen my knives using a really nice whetstone and really taking it to that level of truly being able to put a nice edge on a knife makes a knife a more useful tool. And having that more useful tool in a disaster scenario that I know I can restore back to a perfect edge every time offers real benefit to me. And it's a skill I can take with me today, 20 years from now, through a disaster. Without a disaster, doesn't matter. And it's that type of skill we're talking about here. Those types of skills, not just one, but many. You know, you got to add those up and turn it into a whole lifestyle.
I couldn't agree more. The third piece, for some reason, we seem to really like the number 3. The third
it's a good number.
It's a good number. Today's show is brought to you by the number 3.
Mm-hmm.
Expand and exercise your community by getting on the forum and sharing your survival chi plans. Now, this isn't some dastardly ploy to get you involved in yet one more in the rabbit hole experience. We really want you to get on there, and we really want you to not only share your ideas with others and share your thoughts and solutions with other people, but also the benefit of a community is to get feedback and maybe see things from perspectives that you haven't before. And that's one of the reasons why Jonathan and I work so well together, is while in many ways we're extremely similar, we come at things each with our own perspective. And you know, Jonathan will totally pick up on stuff that I miss, and I'll pick up. Yeah, totally. So get on there, and you'll get constructive feedback, and you'll probably help somebody else out by putting your plan on there. If you've got something that's, you know, extremely personal, then that's fine, leave it off. But even if you just put up your general plan, and each person puts it under the general category, and if we get enough people, we're actually going to make it a permanent category that show listeners and forum users and blog users can go to and engage in from here on out, because I think it is such an incredibly powerful tool.
And this is a great way to use community to really challenge yourself to get a better plan, right? So if you've got a plan now, and by the way, if your plan is a very simple one and you're kind of embarrassed about it, this is a better reason to throw it out there. Don't be embarrassed about any plan, by the way. If you have a plan, you have just beat 99.9% of the people out there. So if you have any plan or come up with any type of plan, be proud of it, stick it out there, and be willing to say, hey, guys, what should I add to this? You know, or what's on this that I don't need? And feel free, you know, one of the things I expect is everybody will be taking a look at all these plans and learning from each other. And in the end, we will have a community of people with the best plans out there.
Absolutely. And not just survival plans to improve your life in the here and now.
Right.
Make sure that each person starts a new thread under the general category for their survival chi plan. And I will even tell you this, and I'll tell you this, and I'm essentially working 2, maybe 2.5 full-time jobs now, but you're going to see my plan up there before the next broadcast. It's not going to be the most elaborate thing in the world, but you're going to see my plans and my goals on the forum before the next broadcast.
All right. I'll do it.
I'm throwing down the gauntlet and making Jonathan do it too.
I'll get mine out there too, because I don't want to feel like that guy. By the way, for all of you out there, don't be that guy. Be one of these guys.
Yes.
Don't be that guy.
And with that, we wrap up episode 78. Thank you for joining us. This has been an episode from the In the Rabbit Hole Urban Survival Podcast. You can learn more by visiting intherabbithole.com. Be sure to like this video and subscribe to our YouTube channel for more great survival stuff.